Yes, hi everybody. My name is Steffanie Stelnick, and I am a real estate attorney throughout the state of California. So I know a hot topic going on with everyone, and I hope you guys are all staying safe with COVID is evictions. I do want to cover the current state of evictions with the state of California. I also want to go into different specific cities of Los Angeles with that rent more, and then also go into detail about COVID moratorium. So I actually prepared a PowerPoint, so I'm gonna start sharing with you guys right now. So it'll pop up right now. Okay. So buying and selling properties in the state of California, but in reality, we're really discussing all different types of evictions. So as most of you guys should know, or you do know, on January 1, AB 1482 was passed by the state of California, which created that the entire state of California had a rent control ordinance. Now, there are certain exemptions, such as single-family residences are exempt unless they are owned by a corporation. They can be owned by a limited liability corporation, but if the entity that owns that LLC is not an individual, not a trust, and is owned by a corporation, then that is no longer exempt. Housing that has been issued a certificate of occupancy within the 15 previous years. Duplex where the owner occupies one of the units as the owner's principal residence is exempt. And from now on all leases, a tenant must be served with the car rent cap and just cause addendum, notifying the tenant that the property is exempt from this type of rent control until the notice of exemption is received. So if the tenant has not received from January 1 until now a notice that the property is exempt, they are subject to state rent control. The good news is it's not grandfathered in, which means you can serve it today and proceed with whatever the landlord wants to do. Or when you're buying the property, you can have it served during escrow so that you can proceed accordingly to try to get the tenants out before you close escrow. Now, if the city has stricter guidelines, then the state rules will not apply. It'll be the city. And so that's why the next slide is going to detail more for everybody what a just cause eviction and what a non-cause eviction is allowed or not allowed under the state ordinance, as well as the city of Los Angeles. So if you own a rental property in the city of Los Angeles, it may be subject to the city's rent stabilization ordinance. Now I'm talking about the city of Los Angeles because a lot of investors love to buy properties in the city of Los Angeles. So you need to be aware of the rent control that you guys are subjecting yourself to and how much money you have to put into your buy price so that you guys are not held and having to come out a lot more money, and then you guys are not hitting your mark and having to not cover your costs. So the city of Los Angeles rent stabilization ordinance applies to anything that was built on or before October 1st, 1978, as well as replacement units. So most of the properties in the city of Los Angeles are rent control. There is a city of Los Angeles website called Zymus that you guys can check. You put in the address and it'll let you know if it has an RSO or it does not. But their single family residences are not subject to the city of Los Angeles rent control, but they will be subject to AB 1482, the state rent control, unless the tenant has received an exemption notice. Apartments, duplexes, 2 or more single dwellings, rooms in a hotel are not part of the rent control as well. So these legal reasons for evictions, and I don't want to go too fast so you guys can take notes in regards to what the at-fault eviction and a no-fault eviction is, because this is what's key for the AB 1482 as well, which is the state rent control. But a lot of investors try to use what's called the Ellis Act, which is you take it over, you serve the notice to terminate, but that requires you to go through the city. You as investors want to try to avoid going through the city at all costs, because if you go through the Ellis Act, then you have to take the rental property off the market for 2 years. So you have to factor into your costs what it would be if you had gone through the Ellis Act, add a little bit more, try to build a relationship with the tenants to try to get them out for a cash for keys agreement so you can avoid it. But hypothetically, if you have to go through the Ellis Act, you go through the Ellis Act. A lot of commercial developers are doing this by buying the entire and changing the use of the property in commercial properties, but that's for a different day, not today. So we're not going to go through that. Failure. So obviously an NFault eviction is failure to pay rent, violation of the rental agreement or lease, like a 3-day notice to perform. Say a person has a dog on the property and it's not in the lease, that is a violation of the rental agreement. They have 3 days to get rid of the dog or get it approved by the landlord, or else it's considered an NFault eviction. Unreasonable interference with the comfort, safety, or enjoyment of tenants or damages to the rental unit or the property. Using the rental unit or the common areas for illegal activity, refusal to renew a lease or rental agreement of like terms and conditions, refusing the landlord access to the rental unit, and at the end of the lease term, the landlord discovers the tenant is not the one who initially rented the unit and didn't approve of this person, then that's an at-fault eviction. And the tenant failed to temporarily relocate or honor a permanent relocation agreement as required per the tenant habitability plan. So that's like the Ellis Act. So say a tenant, you do everything you're required to, you give them the 60-day notice, they fail to vacate, then you can proceed with an at-fault eviction. Now I want to harp on a lot of these because this is going to help us to go more into what's going on with COVID. As long, you guys have to start understanding this because this is when we go back to normal, which we don't know when that will be, but at this point in time, the at-fault evictions are stayed as a result of COVID for the time being. The relocation assistance information, I want to go over a little bit because it goes for AB 1482, which is a lot less than like the city of Los Angeles. But AB 1482 requires 1 month of rent as a relocation payment. So if the tenant is renting at $2,000, the relocation amount is $2,000. You'll see on the next slide the extreme difference between the state ordinance and the city ordinances. And once again, you have to make sure that you, every city that you go in, like Oakland has their own rent control that's a lot stricter than the state. So that'll be what takes the precedence in regards to eviction. Same thing with San Francisco, same thing with Richmond. So Santa Monica has a rent control, Pasadena has a rent control. You just have to look up the different ordinances in different cities to find out what the relocation amount is. So per the state ordinance, you can terminate the tenancy with proper notice, but you must put the 1 month of rent relocation and give it to the tenant within 15 days of that termination of notice. So they need to receive that money before they relocate. And if they don't relocate, that's when it becomes an at-fault eviction.